My name is Conchetta Bonilla, and I was 35 years old when my husband decided the life we built together was something he needed to escape. I didn't realize it was happening at first. People always imagine marriages end with explosions, plates thrown, doors slammed, a final cruel sentence that echoes in your head forever. But what happened to us didn't begin with a bang. It began with a smirk, with little comments that sounded like jokes until they started feeling like knives. I'd been working in IT security for 12 years by then. It's the kind of job people nod politely at when you mention it, because it sounds important but also painfully dull. Most days I sat in front of a screen, running audits, patching vulnerabilities, and making sure the systems for companies that didn't know my name wouldn't collapse overnight. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, really well. 6 figures, good benefits, steady growth. And with 2 kids to raise, steady was my love language. My husband, Ethan, used to love that about me. Back when we were younger, he'd call me his anchor, the one who made things make sense, the one who remembered deadlines, bills, doctor appointments, and how life can go sideways if you don't keep your hands on the wheel. We met in college. I was the quiet, focused girl who always had a planner. He was the guy who could make a dull party feel like a movie scene. He had that easy charm, laughing too loudly, making friends too quickly, pulling people into his orbit like gravity. Back then, I liked being pulled. We were 21, living on ramen, coffee, and optimism. We'd go out on Friday nights, spend Saturday bouncing between parties, and collapse on Sunday like we'd earned it. No kids, no mortgage, no reality. Just the intoxicating feeling that life was wide open. We got married at 25. Lily came along when I was 27, bright-eyed, fearless, already too smart for her own good. Our son Noah followed 2 years later, and suddenly our world had schedules and snacks and tiny shoes that disappeared in the laundry like magic tricks. And that's when life shifted. Not in a bad way, just in a way that demanded we grow up. I stopped craving loud nights out. I started craving quiet mornings. I found joy in things Ethan didn't even notice. Lily practicing her spelling words, Noah giggling as he built crooked Lego towers, the rare moment when both kids were asleep and the house finally exhaled. To me, it felt like we'd reached the part of the story that mattered. To Ethan, it started to feel like a cage. At first, he hid it, or maybe he didn't know how to admit it. He'd sigh when I suggested staying in. He'd get restless during family movie nights, checking his phone like something better might appear on the screen. Then, about 2 years before everything broke, he started hanging out with a new group of friends, people from a gym he'd joined, a men's social club that sounded innocent enough when he mentioned it. They weren't bad people, exactly, but they all shared the same energy. Divorced men, single men, child-free men in their 30s who acted like settling down was a symptom of weakness. They went out constantly. Thursday nights turned into Friday nights. Saturday brunch turned into day, drinking that stretched into midnight. At first, I didn't mind. I told myself Ethan deserved time with friends. Parenting was exhausting, and maybe he needed the release. But the problem wasn't that he went out. The problem was that he started wanting me to follow him into that world, like motherhood should be something I could switch off with a babysitter in a mini dress. The first time he suggested it, I actually laughed. A club, I said? On a Tuesday? Ethan, Noah has school in the morning and I have a 6 a.m. meeting. His face tightened like I'd insulted him. You're always tired, he snapped. You're always making excuses. They're not excuses, I said carefully. They're responsibilities. That word seemed to trigger something in him, like I'd said something dirty. He walked away muttering, God, you're boring. Boring. It's such a small word, 5 letters, nothing dramatic. But coming from the person who once called me his anchor, it felt like betrayal. I tried to talk to him, tried to meet him halfway, suggested date nights that weren't clubs, dinners, walks, weekend trips when we could plan childcare properly. Suggested we find something together again. He'd agree in the moment and then sabotage it later. Suddenly he'd forget. Suddenly he'd have plans with his friends. Suddenly I'd be the one begging him to show up for the life we'd built. And then came Madison. He didn't introduce her to me directly. She was just a name that started popping up like background noise. Madison said this. Madison knows this place. Madison got us on the list. At first, I assumed she was just one of the girlfriends in his friend group. But there was something about the way he said her name, too casual, too rehearsed, like he was practicing not to sound guilty. Madison was 28. a bartender at some trendy downtown spot, the kind of woman who always looked like she'd just stepped out of an Instagram story. Ethan talked about her the way people talk about an idea, not a person, like she represented youth, freedom, a version of life that didn't include soccer practice and grocery lists. And the worst part? I could feel him comparing me to that idea. The breaking point came the night before Thanksgiving. I was in the kitchen, elbow deep in prep work. Turkey brine, cranberry sauce, potatoes. My parents were coming the next day. Ethan's brother and his family too. It was supposed to be one of those holidays where you pretend everything is fine because everyone is watching. Ethan walked in, dressed like he was headed to a nightclub. Not nice dinner dressed. Nightclub dressed. I didn't even ask where he was going. I already knew. Out, he said before I could speak. Madison knows the owner of this new place. We're on the list. It's the night before Thanksgiving, I said. My voice sounded too calm for the storm inside my chest. We have family coming. The kids. You can handle it, he cut in. You always do. That sentence landed harder than anything else. Because it was true. I always did. I tried one last time. Told him Lily was excited to help bake tomorrow. Told him Noah had been talking about seeing his cousins all week. Told him my mom was expecting Ethan's famous mashed potatoes, something he'd made every year since we got married. He stared at me like I was speaking another language. Then he said it. God, Conchetta, you're so boring now. I froze. He took a step closer, eyes sharp, like he'd been waiting to say it. When did you become this person? He demanded. You used to be fun. Now you're just this suburban mom who thinks watching Netflix is an adventure. You act like we're 50. I'm 35, I said quietly. So am I, he snapped, and I'm not ready to be dead yet. Dead. Like the life we built, our children, our home, our routines, was some kind of slow funeral. I stood there next to a bowl of cranberry sauce, realizing the truth with a sick clarity. Ethan didn't just want a night out. He wanted a different life. And he was already halfway out the door. He left anyway. Came home at 4 a.m, smelling like liquor and perfume that wasn't mine. Slept through the Thanksgiving morning chaos while I cooked, cleaned, managed the kids, and smiled for family photos like my heart wasn't cracking. 2 weeks later, he sat me down like a man delivering bad news he'd already made peace with. I want a divorce, he said. And when I stared at him, numb, he added the line that made my stomach drop. I've been thinking about it for months. Months. Meaning while I was trying to fix things, he was planning his exit. Meaning while I was holding our family together, he was already gone. Mentally, emotionally, maybe in ways I didn't even know yet. And the most humiliating part? He already had a lawyer. Papers ready. A plan. Everyone else seemed to know except me. I realized in that moment that the word boring wasn't the real insult. The real insult was this. He'd let me believe we were struggling while he was already choosing to leave. The strangest part of divorce isn't the paperwork or the lawyers, or even the moment you realize the marriage is actually over. It's how fast someone can turn into a stranger. Ethan moved through the process like he was checking items off a list he'd already memorized. Mediation instead of court. Split custody. Calm voice. Rational tone. Like this wasn't the dismantling of a 10-year marriage, but a business transaction he'd rehearsed in his head long before he ever told me. I didn't fight him. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood something that hit me like cold water. You can't convince someone to value a life they've already decided is beneath them. We agreed on a custody schedule that looked fair on paper. The kids would stay with me during the week so their routines wouldn't be disrupted. School, homework, bedtime, all the boring things Ethan claimed to hate. He'd have them on weekends, when life could be fun. He kept the house. That one still stings when I think about it. Technically, the house went to him because it was better for the kids, but I was required to keep paying half the mortgage. Some legal language about maintaining their standard of living. I remember sitting there thinking how ironic it was that I was still financially supporting a life I'd been pushed out of. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment closer to my office. It was smaller, quieter, and painfully empty at first. The kids' rooms had mismatched furniture and thrifted decor because I refused to go into debt trying to recreate something I'd lost. Still, it felt peaceful. No tension humming through the walls. No sighs when I suggested an early night. No judgment for choosing comfort over chaos. Ethan moved Madison into the house 2 weeks after I left. 2 weeks. Lily was still asking when I was coming home. Noah was still checking every night to see if my shoes were by the door. And Ethan had already replaced me. When I found out, it wasn't because he told me. It was because Lily asked, in that careful way kids use when they're trying to understand something that doesn't make sense. "Mom," she said one Sunday night as I tucked her into bed, "why is Daddy's friend always sleeping in your room at his house?" My chest tightened. "What friend?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "The one with the loud laugh," she said. "Madison. She smells like strawberries." I swallowed hard and smoothed her hair back. "She's just staying there for now," I said, choosing the safest words I could manage. Lily nodded, but her eyes told me she didn't like it. Noah was less subtle. "Mom," he said the next weekend, "Daddy's friend is weird." "Weird how?" "She tells me to be quiet when she's sleeping," he said, "and she doesn't eat breakfast." Kids always know. The first month after the divorce would have been funny if it hadn't involved my children. Ethan posted constantly on social media, photos from clubs, bars, rooftop lounges. Madison was always front and center, perfect hair, tight outfits, that effortless confidence people mistake for happiness. Captions about living authentically and finally choosing joy. Not a single photo of Lily or Noah. Not one. When I picked them up Sunday nights, they were exhausted. Lily told me they spent most weekends at Ethan's parents' house because he and Madison were too tired from going out. Noah said Madison slept a lot and got mad when cartoons were too loud. Parent of the year behavior. By the third month, the cracks started to show. Ethan called me late one Friday night. I didn't answer at first. Something told me it wouldn't be good news. He called again. I picked up. "Conchetta," he said, his voice unsteady, "I need a favor." I already knew where this was going. "Madison had an emergency," he continued. "She used my credit card and it's maxed out." I closed my eyes. "And," I said, "and I'm short on my half of the mortgage this month." I laughed. I couldn't help it. It came out sharp and bitter. "That sounds like a Madison problem," I said. "Not a me problem." He got defensive immediately, said I was being cold, said I was punishing him, said I should think about the kids. "I am thinking about the kids," I replied, "which is why I won't teach them that it's okay to drain someone else's life for your bad choices." I hung up. He figured it out somehow. Probably borrowed money. Probably lied. It wasn't my concern anymore. A month later, he called again. Madison had crashed his car. She wasn't drunk, just texting while driving. Insurance wouldn't cover it because she wasn't listed on the policy. He wanted help with the deductible. "Ask Madison," I said. "She's spontaneous. I'm sure she'll figure it out." By month 5, things got uglier. Madison's ex-boyfriend showed up at the house. A young woman, barely out of college, came screaming about unpaid rent, stolen electronics, and lies. The neighbors called the police. Lily called me crying. "Mom," she sobbed, "there are scary people yelling at Daddy's house." That was it. The next morning, I filed an emergency custody petition. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because my children didn't deserve to be collateral damage in Ethan's midlife crisis. By month 6, Ethan's work was suffering. He'd started missing deadlines, showing up late, calling out sick after nights out. He called me again, panicked. "They put me on a performance improvement plan," he said. "I can't lose my job." I almost laughed at the irony. "I thought I was too boring to understand your lifestyle," I said calmly. "Figure it out." But I took the kids more anyway. Not for him, for them. They needed stability, predictability, a home where yelling strangers didn't show up at night. Ethan, meanwhile, leaned fully into the fantasy. He quit his job, claiming it was stifling his creativity. Started a podcast about mindfulness and living in the moment. 12 subscribers, one of them his mother. Madison spent his money like it was infinite. Courses, equipment, trips they couldn't afford. By month 7, Lily stopped wanting to go back. "She's creepy, Mom," she whispered one night, "and Daddy's always mad." Noah said Madison ate all the snacks and made Daddy cry. That one hurt. Even after everything, I didn't want my kids watching their father unravel. By month 8, Ethan showed up at my apartment at 11 p.m. He looked hollow, thinner, older, nothing like the man who'd called me boring. "I made a mistake," he said, voice cracking. Madison had been cheating on him, stealing from him, running up debt in his name. The house was in danger of foreclosure because she'd convinced him to skip payments for a vacation. "I need help," he whispered. "I don't know what to do." I listened. I felt sorry for him. And then I remembered the kitchen, the cranberry sauce, the word dead. "You should call your lawyer," I said, "the one you hired to divorce me." He stared at me, waiting for me to save him. I didn't. "The kids can stay with me full time," I added, "until you get your life together." He cried harder at that. But he agreed, because he had no choice. Madison disappeared the way people like her always do. Not with an apology, not with closure, just gone. One day she was living in the house I helped pay for, sleeping in the bed I picked out, spending money Ethan hadn't earned yet. The next, she blocked him on everything, packed what she could carry, and moved in with someone else. Another bartender, another couch, another temporary story. Ethan didn't even get a goodbye. What he did get were the leftovers. Unpaid credit cards, jewelry missing from drawers, charges he didn't recognize but still had to explain, and the slow, nauseating realization that the woman he'd destroyed his family for had never seen him as anything more than a resource. The house went into foreclosure 3 months later. I found out when a notice showed up in my mailbox by mistake. I stood there staring at the envelope, my name still attached to a life I no longer lived, and felt something strange settle in my chest. Not triumph, relief, because the fantasy was finally collapsing under its own weight. Ethan moved back in with his parents at 35 years old, the same parents who had once joked about how lucky he was to have a wife who kept everything together. His father, who never praised me when we were married, apparently told him point blank that he'd thrown away the best thing that ever happened to him. His mother cried on the phone when she called to check on the kids. "I don't understand what he was thinking," she whispered. "You were such a good wife." I didn't answer. What was there to say? The kids adjusted faster than I expected. Children are resilient when they're finally allowed to feel safe. Lily started sleeping through the night again. Noah stopped wetting the bed. Their teachers mentioned improved focus, less anxiety, fewer emotional outbursts. It was like removing chaos from their environment let them breathe. Ethan tried to visit more, tried to be present. But presence isn't something you can turn on like a light switch. He'd show up tired, distracted, haunted by the consequences of choices he didn't know how to undo. He'd promise outings and cancel them, promise changes and revert back the moment things got hard. And the kids noticed. By the time the house officially went back to the bank, they were living with me full time. Ethan lost the house. 6 months later, I bought it. Not out of spite, not out of revenge. It was a good investment. The price was a fraction of its value. And more importantly, Lily and Noah wanted their rooms back. Walking through that front door again felt surreal. The walls still held echoes of a life I thought I'd lost forever. But this time the air felt different. Calmer. Ethan came by once to pick up some mail that still hadn't been forwarded. He stood in the doorway, eyes drifting over the familiar space. "You look happy," he said quietly. "I am," I replied. That seemed to break something in him. That was around the time I met Daniel. It wasn't dramatic. No sparks flying across a crowded room. No whirlwind romance. We met at a cybersecurity conference, two professionals commiserating over bad coffee and long hours. He was 37, divorced, with a daughter a year younger than Lily. He didn't flinch when I talked about kids, didn't make jokes about being tied down, didn't treat stability like a personality flaw. Our first date was lunch. Our second was a trip to Home Depot. He laughed when I told him that was my idea of a good Saturday. "That's not boring," he said. "That's peaceful." The kids liked him immediately. Not because he tried to impress them, but because he didn't try at all. Ethan noticed. He noticed the way Lily talked about Daniel, the way Noah asked if Daniel would be coming to soccer practice, the way my life slowly filled with something solid again. That's when the calls started. Late night, rambling, emotional. "I miss our family," Ethan texted once. "I miss the life we had." I didn't respond. Another night. I didn't know how good I had it. I was scared of getting old. Still nothing. Then he called. Asked if we could try again. For the kids. I laughed. Not cruelly, just honestly. "You left because I was boring," I said. "Nothing's changed. I'm still the same woman." "That doesn't sound so bad anymore," he said quietly. "That's because you confuse chaos with excitement," I replied, "and stability with death." He cried. I didn't go back. The final straw came when he showed up at my office unannounced. Dressed too nicely. Holding a container of food like some grand gesture. My coworkers watched as I escorted him outside. "This isn't appropriate," I told him. "You can't just show up here." "I just wanted to show you I've changed," he said, eyes desperate. "I don't need you to change," I said. "I needed you to stay." He tried to kiss me. I stepped back. "Is this because of Daniel?" he snapped. "He's not even that impressive." And there it was. The same entitlement, the same shallow thinking. I went back inside. Ethan stood alone in the parking lot, watching the life he abandoned continue without him. After Ethan showed up at my office, something shifted. Not in him, in me. For months I'd been careful, polite, measured. I'd explained boundaries gently, like maybe if I chose the right words, he'd finally understand that the door he walked through had closed behind him. But watching him stand there in the parking lot, humiliated, angry, still somehow convinced I owed him access to my life. I realized something important. Ethan didn't miss me. He missed the version of himself that existed when I was holding everything together. And that wasn't love. That was entitlement. Word about the office incident spread faster than I expected. I work in a professional environment, and suddenly people who had barely known my name were stopping by my desk with concerned looks and awkward sympathy. One coworker asked if everything was okay at home. Another joked, too lightly, that at least I was popular. I hated it. Ethan had crossed a line, and this time, I wasn't going to smooth it over for him. When he called that night, I didn't answer. When he texted apologies the next morning, long, emotional messages about regret and growth, I left them unread. He didn't handle that well. A week later, I started hearing things. Whispers from parents at school. A sudden chill from a few moms who used to wave at pickup. One dad awkwardly asked if it was true that I was keeping the kids from their father. That was when I realized Ethan had changed tactics. He was telling people I was controlling, that I'd turned the kids against him, that I was bitter and vindictive, punishing him for leaving. The irony almost made me dizzy. This was the man who moved another woman into our house 2 weeks after I left. The man who skipped payments to fund a vacation. The man who told me I was boring and dead. And now I was the villain. Some of his old friends, men I'd barely spoken to in years, reached out online. Passive-aggressive messages about co-parenting and putting the past aside for the kids. A couple of Madison's former acquaintances chimed in too, acting like they suddenly cared deeply about Ethan's relationship with his children. I didn't respond to any of them. I called my lawyer. Within 48 hours, cease and desist letters went out. Screenshots were compiled, custody schedules documented, text messages archived, messages where Ethan asked me to take the kids extra days because he was overwhelmed, emails where he admitted he couldn't afford groceries, voicemails where he begged for help. The messages stopped. So did the rumors. People at school softened again. Invitations resumed. The truth has a way of asserting itself when it's backed by receipts. Through all of this, Daniel never once pushed. He didn't offer to confront Ethan, didn't insert himself into the drama, didn't ask me to choose sides or rush into anything. He just showed up, picked Lily up from art class when I was running late, helped Noah practice soccer drills in the yard, sat with me on the couch after the kids went to bed, listening while I vented without trying to fix everything. One night, as we folded laundry together, I finally said it out loud. I was never boring, I said. I was just responsible. Daniel smiled. You were building something, he said. Some people mistake that for being stuck. That sentence stayed with me. Ethan spiraled quietly after that. He lost a second job for showing up late too many times. His parents stopped covering for him. The friends who'd hyped him up during his liberation phase stopped answering his calls now that he wasn't buying rounds or hosting parties. Funny how empowerment has an expiration date. Lily noticed first. Daddy seems sad all the time, she said one night. I know, I replied carefully. Sometimes adults make choices they don't fully understand until later. Noah was more blunt. He doesn't listen, he said. He just talks about how things used to be. That hurt more than anything Ethan had ever said to me, because it was true. Ethan wasn't growing. He was rewinding. The final confrontation came when he asked if we could talk one last time. We met at a quiet cafe, neutral ground. He looked older than I remembered, not just tired, unfinished, like a man stuck halfway between who he was and who he should have become. I don't recognize my life anymore, he admitted. Everything feels empty. I stirred my coffee, letting the silence stretch. You emptied it, I said calmly. You traded depth for noise. He flinched. I know I hurt you, he said. I know I hurt the kids, but I've learned. I swear I have. I believe you learned, I said. I just don't believe you changed. He reached across the table like he might grab my hand. I pulled mine back. I didn't fail you, I continued. I just stopped carrying you. That was the moment he finally understood. Not because I was cruel, but because I was done. By the time people started saying things like, you handled that with so much grace, it was already over. The chaos, the guilt, the constant feeling that I had to explain myself. I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I stopped fighting altogether. Ethan's life didn't collapse all at once. It eroded, slowly, publicly, painfully. The kind of unraveling that doesn't make headlines but leaves everyone quietly aware of what happened and why. He moved from his parents' house into a studio apartment on the edge of town, sold most of his furniture, canceled subscriptions, took whatever work he could get. No more big ideas about reinvention or freedom. just survival. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The life he'd mocked as boring, the routines, the structure, the early nights, was the same life he was now desperate for. Lily and Noah saw him every other weekend, sometimes, when he could manage it. They came home with stories that made my chest ache. Empty fridge, long silences, him staring at his phone like he was waiting for someone to rescue him. Lily asked me once, very carefully, "Mom, why does Dad seem smaller now?" I didn't know how to answer that without breaking her heart. So I told her the truth in the kindest way I could. Because sometimes adults forget that growing up doesn't mean losing yourself. It means choosing what matters. She nodded like she understood more than she should at her age. A few months later, my parents hosted a family dinner. Daniel came with me. It wasn't fancy, no dramatic speeches, just food, laughter, kids running through the house like it was safe to do so. That's when I realized something simple and devastating. This was the life Ethan thought he was escaping. And it was beautiful. Ethan found out about Daniel officially when Lily mentioned him offhandedly during a pickup. "He helps me with math," she said, "and he doesn't yell when he's tired." Ethan froze. He called me that night. First real phone call in months. "Is it serious?" he asked. "It's healthy," I replied. "That's all that matters." There was a pause, then quietly, "I think I made the biggest mistake of my life." "I know," I said, "but that doesn't make it mine to fix." The final time I saw Ethan was at Lily's school play. Daniel sat beside me, my parents on the other side, Noah in the front row, waving like he owned the place. Ethan sat alone in the back. When the curtain closed, Lily ran straight to us, hugged Daniel, high-fived her brother. Then, and only then, remembered to go say hello to her dad. Ethan watched it all unfold like someone observing a life he used to recognize. Later, as Daniel took the kids for ice cream, Ethan approached me. "I really did love our life," he said quietly. "I just didn't know it until it was gone." "Yeah," I replied. "That's usually how it works." He looked like he wanted to say more. Apologies, promises, regret packaged as hope. I didn't give him the opening, because closure doesn't require permission. On the drive home, Daniel reached for my hand. "You okay?" he asked. "I am," I said honestly, "for the first time in a long time." We've been talking about moving in together, slowly, carefully, making sure the kids feel secure every step of the way. Lily adores his daughter. Noah treats her like family. Our home is full of noise again. The good kind. The boring kind. The beautiful kind. Ethan still texts sometimes. Late at night. Apologies wrapped in nostalgia. Regret dressed up as reflection. I don't respond. There's nothing left to say. Because here's the truth I learned the hard way. Stability isn't boring. Consistency isn't dull. Responsibility isn't a prison. They're foundations. And when someone tells you you're boring for building one, let them go chase their excitement. Because their excitement usually turns out to be chaos with better marketing. And you're boring? It might just be someone else's forever.